welcome, Red Eyes members. Thank you very much for tuning in. It's great to have you along here for this second segment with Helen Sewell. We're talking about astrology, the connection to 2012, psychology, and much, much more. Really interesting conversation here. And I'd like to begin, Helen, to ask you a little bit about, I guess, the influences of the outer planets. We talked about this before, but I'd like to get your take on it. Why do you think that these outer planets have seems to have at least so much more effect on us, at least on the subconscious or unconscious level? Do you know why that is, Helen?
Well, if we go back into history, Saturn used to be the outermost planet because you could actually see it with your naked eye. You didn't need telescopes or anything. And symbolically, and in a person's chart, Saturn is it's the place where we meet our boundaries. It's the place where we meet reality. And Saturn is actually, if you like, quite frightened of the outer planets because it means the outer planets are to do with the archetypal forces of unconscious. They're not conscious. So the three outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they work on a different level. It's like they're the archetypal gods in our consciousness. And so we have the personal planets, which are the inner planets, and then we have the boundary, which is Saturn. And then we have these sort of huge archetypal forces. And that's what I was saying was so interesting to see what was going on. It was on the planet when these planets were discovered, because it's almost like we're now ready to meet those forces in a much more conscious way.
Yeah.
So, the first one was Uranus, and that was a time of huge revolution and innovation, and yeah, if you like, that was the start of the accelerated process. And since the discovery of the outer planets, I think we've really changed and developed as in our consciousness. And if we look to see when Neptune was discovered, that was very much a time of the filmmaking, fantasy. It was like the time when the Theosophists became very popular. The whole connection with the spirit world and illusion and all the kind of Neptunian things, that sort of wanting to feel connected with the spirit world came to the fore. It's glamour and fantasy. It's like the opposite to Saturn, if you like. So Saturn, it's frightened of Uranus because it feels like Uranus is going to overthrow the old order. It feels that Neptune is going to dissolve its boundaries because Neptune rules the watery sign of Pisces, which is much more a connection with the numinous, arts and music. It's not tangible, earthy things. And with Pluto, it feels very threatened by Pluto because Pluto drives the if you like, the huge evolutionary cycles. Even like the annihilation of a species, if it means the forwarding of our human consciousness. So these are big archetypal forces that are kind of terrifying to Saturn, if you like, which is our boundary.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, if you look just at our human form, the Saturn cycle is every 7 years. We get the conjunction, the square, and the opposition, then the square, and then the Saturn return age about 29. All our whole cell system is renewed every 7 years.
Yes.
So it's very much a planet to do with reality and incarnation.
And the physiology of our body, though.
Yes.
Huh.
Yes, very much.
Interesting.
And that's why, all the conditions associated with Saturn, like arthritis and our joints, our bones, it's our structure of our body, our skin, which is the boundary of our body. All the conditions that affect us into old age are very Saturnian. And it rules the sign of Capricorn. And I think that's what's so interesting about the chart of 2012, is that the sun is exactly 0 degrees Capricorn. So if anything, if you look at the prophecies for this, many people believe there's going to be sort of a huge spiritual shift or shift in consciousness. That if anything physical is going to happen, it would certainly be in the sign of Capricorn. I think it's the last of the earth signs, so it's the sign of manifestation, if you like, physical manifestation, and that's what makes me wonder about earth changes as well over the next few years.
Yeah, because I followed this actually much more closely in just a couple of years ago. In that sense, it felt like there was a huge increase in earth changes, earthquakes, volcano eruptions. Of course, the tsunamis and things like that were happening. But to me, right now at least, it feels like we're a little bit more in a quiet mode. People might be screaming at me right now because they're following more closely than I am. But at least on these bigger events aren't happening on the wide scale. Do you think that we're in a kind of the quiet before the storm here, possibly, Helen?
I do, actually, yes. And even if you look back through, apparently, people that have done studies with the sun will recognize that the sun cycle is very significant.
Yes.
And at the moment, it is, more active than it's been since records began. Sunspot-wise, it's gone very quiet, but it's like just a few years ago when the peak of the cycle, there were massive coronal explosions and black spots and all sorts of things. So, yeah, I think that is also associated with shifts in consciousness,
yes,
interestingly enough. And I think that could well be something that is physical and not symbolic.
Well, exactly, and again, that the amount of energy that is thrown out by these CMEs, the coronal mass ejections, is massive, and again, how this affects not only our Earth's magnetic field, but also the magnetic field of our brain. I've been looking at this, and I think that there's definitely something to that, and in regards to how we are being affected, our own consciousness, of course, and then again, what we can mention. Probably many people listening are aware of this already, but the activities of the sun is in a low point right now, and will become more prominent into 2012, leading up to the years of 2012. The activity will allegedly increase. So we'll just have to watch that and see how these two correlate, because I think it can be really interesting to see if the energy, so to speak, on the planet also increases as the energy of the sun is being hurled at us, if you know what I mean, Helen.
Yes, I do. Yes, exactly. I certainly look at astrology as being a reflection of what's going on a bigger scale. From that point of view, it's just so fascinating. And because there's also other things, like the change from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. And the thing is, when, as human beings, I just don't think we deal with change very well. We resist it. It brings up all sorts of anxieties for people. And the film Zeitgeist, I don't know if you've seen it.
Sure, I've seen it, yeah.
Okay, the first part one, is all about the ages and the shift, and I can absolutely go along with everything that's said in that film. I think it's absolutely spot on. But at the moment, with shifting over from the age of Pisces, which is so much to do with Christianity. I mean, the symbol of the fish with Pisces is also the symbol for Christianity.
Yes.
And so moving into the age of Aquarius, we're also going to have to find a new god. But I think, from my own personal view, or maybe it's a fantasy, I don't know, is that actually we won't need to look to the outside for an external god, because we are all God.
Interesting.
We're all evolving at the same time. And the sign of Aquarius is very much, it's an air sign. So even though a lot of people think it's a water sign because the symbol is of the woman distributing water out of an urn. So people think it's a water sign, but it's not. It's an air sign. And the air sign is to do with the mind.
Right.
And it's to do with the rational and explaining things rationally. And it's to do with equality and that we are all equal. We are all equal in our humanness. Huh. And so it's a very humanitarian sign.
Mm.
It's a fixed sign, so the belief system can get a bit rigid and a bit fixed. But it would, I think, because of the sort of the rationality of it, it could well be that with Pisces, it's very much to do with the numinous and the spirit world, but Aquarius is much more to do with the mind and what's rational.
Yes. And, also I wanted to get your take on this idea of, you mentioned a bit before about Pluto, the how late, so to speak, that was discovered. We named, or they rather named, plutonium, after Pluto, which it's quite interesting in itself. But then, of course, what we had here just a couple of years ago is that they tried to, or they did rather, again on the official level, demoting Pluto from planet status into one of these kind of outer dwarf planets. Yeah, exactly. But what do you think that's significant? Does that, are they trying to send a message here?
Yeah, I have pondered this one quite a lot, and I was thinking that it's like the dark feminine. If you look at Pluto, the dark feminine, and I think it's scary for a lot of people. So it's almost like, well, yeah, if we don't deal with it, if we just sort of demote it,
it'll go away.
Then its power won't be so great.
Right.
But it kind of, I just don't think that it will have that effect.
No. And then, how about the other? I mean, there are other planets further out from there. I mean, Eris is another one that came into the picture around that same time. I'm looking at a picture here right now that says also that Haumea, I don't know if I pronounced that correct, and then even Makemake is another one of these kind of dwarf planets. Do you look into that stuff at all, if there's new things coming up and if that actually is significant in some way?
Well, I do, but I think that if something is meant to be, it comes into our consciousness. Yes, and each one of them has its own myth, of course, which is significant. But it's almost like if we take it on board collectively, for instance, with Chiron, the discovery of Chiron in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Chiron in myth, he was the wounded healer. He was a centaur. Now, most centaurs are a bit primitive and a bit wild, but Chiron was half god, half animal. So he was immortal. And it was when Heracles actually had gone off to kill the Hydra, and he poisoned up his arrows, and he was on his way home, and he decided to call in on his friend and celebrate. And the thing is that centaurs, they can't have alcohol because it makes them go crazy and fight.
Mm-hmm.
It brings out that primitive side of them. So what was interesting was that when the wine was produced, there was a herd of centaurs outside, and Chiron lived nearby. And Heracles, who is like Mars, he couldn't